Good morning. I'm so impressed. The room, like at 9:30 on the dot, just silence. It's impressive. Welcome. Congratulations again to the class of 2029. We're so excited to have you with us. And on that note, I know some of our fantastic admitted students have class visits you're doing this morning. So if you need to duck out, super important to make it to that class on time. You can always find us later or learn more about this program later. It's also being live streamed. And so on that note, please students, leave when and if you need to do so. But for those of us who are here to hear this great conversation, I'm excited to welcome you to the Ask Us Anything panel. My name is Emily Almas. I'm the Director of Admissions here at Bowdoin, and I'm joined by 5 wonderful, fantastic panelists who you definitely want to hear from. In just a moment, they will introduce themselves, but let me be the first to welcome you and introduce you to the John S. Osterweiss Professor of Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies and Senior Vice President and Dean for Academic Affairs, Jennifer Scanlon. Senior Vice President and Dean for Student Affairs, Jim Hoppy. And our lovely, wonderful seniors, Sammy, Iman, and Janet. So in just a moment, folks will introduce themselves, but to give you a roadmap for what's ahead, we'll hear some remarks from some of our panelists, and then the important thing, the question time. We'll turn to all of you. I have colleagues who are in the audience with microphones. They'll approach you so that you can ask a question. But first, some brief introductions. Dean Scanlon, would you like to go first?
Yeah, thank you, Emily, and good morning, everybody, and welcome to Bowdoin. I had the great pleasure of speaking with some of you last night at the family's reception, but not all of you, and I look forward to speaking with more of you. So as Emily said, my name is Jen Scanlon. I've been at Bowdoin for 22 years, and I'm a historian and a gender studies scholar, and now a member of the administration.
Good morning. My name is Jim Hoppy, he, him pronouns, and I'm a Senior VP and Dean for Campus Life. And I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I'm just starting or finishing my 8th month here at Bowdoin after being in student affairs at colleges in Boston and the Twin Cities and on the West Coast. But I work with the collection of offices and departments that support students in everything they do outside of the classroom.
I'm breaking the order, but I'm Janet. I am from Nashville, Tennessee. I'm a government and history double major and a computer science minor. And yeah, around campus, I'm one of the captains of the co-ed club water polo team. I am also the senior digital editor for the Bowdoin Orient, which is the student newspaper on campus. And I'm also one of the chairs of the Conduct Review Board, which is a board on campus that handles student disciplinary processes. So yeah.
Hello, I'm Eman. I'm from Columbus, Ohio, but I was born in Ghana. Let's see, major. Yes, I'm a computer science and philosophy double major, and around campus, I've been involved in student government. I work in the leadership office. I've been involved in college leadership. So a lot of leadership adjacent things. I had a short stint in the Orient, actually. I did a column a few times, and then also Ultimate Frisbee for like 3 weeks.
Hello everybody, my name is Sammy. I'm an economics and sociology double major and a music minor. I am from Washington, D.C., and some of the things I'm involved in on campus are I'm one of the captains for the club soccer team, for the men's club soccer team. I also do a cappella and have done chamber choir on campus. I work in the music department as well and am on the economics department student advisory council.
Wonderful. Well, Dean Scanlon, I'm wondering if I can turn to you to learn a little bit more about the liberal arts at Bowdoin and what might be important to share with our audience.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. You know, I'm reminded a little bit of one of the elements of my job as dean, which is recruiting fantastic faculty to Bowdoin. And when I meet with them, and when I'm meeting with you this morning, it is with absolute sincerity that I talk about how fantastic our faculty are and how fantastic the academic program is. So I feel enormously privileged to be the dean here and to be able to say with this kind of sincerity how much I believe in the work that we do. So I guess for starters, I'd say that we have world-class faculty here at Bowdoin. These are faculty who are enormously accomplished in their research and their scholarship. They are known around the country, some around the world. They work on their own and they work collaboratively with others here and off campus. And equally importantly, they are absolutely devoted to teaching and to working closely and carefully with undergraduate students. So it is a remarkable thing, this both and that we have here, where our faculty are deep scholars and fantastically engaged teachers. I want to mention a few other things. One is that, you know, each year we renovate classrooms, and we have these really fantastic 21st century classrooms in historic buildings. And you can imagine that's not an easy task, but we're doing a really wonderful job. And so we have great labs, we have great classrooms, and those facilitate the kind of teaching and learning that our faculty are so committed to. We also have remarkable libraries and museums. We have an art museum and an Arctic museum, and we have a fantastic special collections in our library. So our students are able to do a lot of object-based learning, which is really important. And there's one statistic I always love, which is that our Museum of Art annually pulls about 2,000 objects for students and classes to come in and engage with. And so I like to think of it as one object for every student at Bowdoin every year. So it's just a really nice thing. We have a couple of important scientific field stations. Some of you might be going to visit Schiller Coastal Studies Center, which is just down the road. We host a coastal studies semester every fall, an interdisciplinary study of coastal issues, science, social science, and humanities issues at Schiller. And then we also have a scientific field station much further afield in the Bay of Fundy called Kent Island. And students spend summers there engaged in some pretty fantastic biological research. We also take our place in Maine very seriously. So whether it's work in Brunswick or a little bit further afield in Portland or Lewiston or further afield in the state, we have a commitment to Maine, and our students develop lasting relationships to the state of Maine. And so much so that about a year and a half ago, we were working on developing learning goals for our students sort of across their lives at Bowdoin. So in the classroom, out of the classroom. And it was the students who insisted that we needed to have a learning goal that was specific to Maine, because Maine really matters. And so I'm going to just finish by reading to you this learning goal, which I think is really beautiful. To discover the natural beauty and to appreciate the environmental and social complexities of the Maine coast through distinct opportunities provided by a residential college committed to a just and sustainable world. There's a lot in that, but I think it's reflective of our students and their own commitments to learning. It's reflective of our faculty and the kinds of opportunities they can provide in a small liberal arts setting, and the relationships between faculty, students, and the state of Maine that develop. Thanks.
Thank you for those thoughts. And as we think about those relationships that you mentioned happening certainly in classrooms and outside of them as well, Dean Hoppy, I wonder, I can turn to you. What might you share with our audience about student development and student life at Bowdoin?
Absolutely. And Jen, you set me up perfectly with that last word of relationships. Yeah, I've been here 8 months, but one of the things that has struck me is the emphasis on community and the importance of community and what that means. And so from the very beginning, as you arrive at Bowdoin, you'll be part of multiple small communities. Your residence hall floor in the bricks, guided by proctors and residence life staff, the orientation trips that will emphasize this connection to Maine, led by the Outing Club and the McKean Center, that take you all over the state to explore the great wilderness and outdoors of Maine and the different civic and entrepreneurial aspects that are taking place all over the state. And then back on campus, meeting with your academic advisor and getting started for classes. But this concept of community is woven throughout. And the emphasis that is placed on community is stronger here than any place else I've ever worked. And I think a couple things I think contribute to that. One is the great work our colleagues in admissions do in selecting folks who have heart and have a passion for being at a place like Bowdoin. The second is everything that is reemphasized through the orientation process. And when you get on campus, you'll see all these signs that talk about the Bowdoin hello. And people will kind of smirk at it and make fun of it, but I see that as having an important aspect here. This sense of acknowledgement right off the top that you belong at Bowdoin, that there's a place for you here, and that as you go through the co-curriculum and the curriculum, you have this opportunity to develop who you are in a community that's going to be supportive and try to nurture and encourage you. One of the things I've noticed about the student body is that competition takes a different type of sense here. I've observed people not thinking that, well, if you succeed that I can't. It's more this sense of that if you're not giving your best, if you're not fully engaging, then I'm not getting everything out of this experience. So I need to help you feel connected and engaged as well. And then the last thing I'll say is just the sense of connection amongst the student body and the care they have for each other. And I'm not naive. I know that they don't always get along. Not everybody is always happy about everything. But this overarching sense of care for each other and nurturing and support for each other is extremely palpable. So community is at the heart of everything we do in student development. The great team that I get to work with works every day to try to nurture that, facilitate that, and help grow and cultivate the sense.
Well, thanks for the kind words about the admissions office as well. I did not ask him to say that. But I do wholeheartedly believe that each of you in the audience, you belong at Bowdoin as well. And I hope you get a sense of that during your time today on campus. So now we turn to the fun stuff, the questions. If you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand. I have colleagues both above in the balcony as well as down here, and they can come to you with the microphone and you can ask your question. Any questions to get us started?
What were your initial impressions of Bowdoin, and in what ways did those impressions turn out to be right, and in what ways did they turn out to be wrong?
Oh, great questions. I actually want to turn to the students first for this, if that's okay. Sammy, do you want to take a stab? What did you expect, and how has it been?
I didn't come in with too many expectations, to be honest. I wanted to come in with a really open mind. I had no idea what I was going to major in or do on campus, but I guess if there was one thing to expect, I would have expected to be really outdoorsy here. And I would say that lived up to the expectations. There were a lot of opportunities to explore Maine and beyond Maine with the BOC or just, with yourself and your friends. At the same time, though, I feel like there were so many things to do on campus that I didn't leave as many times as I thought I would. I just, weekends come and go, and time passes really quickly, and there's so many things to do all over. And it's really hard to just narrow it down and make those choices. But that's one overall expectation that I had that may not have lived up to expectations.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember. I was introduced to Bowdoin by people who had been there. And there was a senior when I was a first year who I talked to before coming in. And when I was talking to him, he was like, yeah, I'm an anthropology, CS major, and there are all these connections, and the value of the liberal arts, you're doing this thing right here in a very different major, but you see the connections, and that people there were very, very friendly. So I expected a very liberal arts education where I get a holistic view and understanding of the world, and also a community that is very friendly. And I think it has lived up to that. I'm a computer science and philosophy double major. I've done research in math. I dance. I've done art. Like, it's just all over the place, and I very much appreciate that. And also the community has been great. My first year, it's not all roses. My first year was a little, the community was a little down because of COVID. They just didn't really, there was a lot of things that were lost, traditions that were lost. There was a sort of a disjointed sense of community, so that was a little bit of a bummer, but not anymore. We've gone out of that. And I think, yeah, it's lived up to my expectations. I didn't have too many, but those are the main two things, and I think it's more than exceeded it.
I think when I was coming to Bowdoin, I was kind of comparing the size of Bowdoin to a lot of my other friends. I was definitely going to the smallest school of anyone that I knew. And so I think I came in and was like, this is going to feel really small, and I'm going to know everybody really fast, or, all that kind of stuff. And I can say with less than 50 days to go, I still meet someone new, like every single week. Honestly, it takes me aback a little bit every time it happens now, but I think that was very fulfilling to me, that I never really outgrew it. I think I've always been very satisfied with getting to know every single person in my year, but I also get to know all these new underclassmen every year. And so I think I expected it to get a little bit smaller than it did. And yeah, I feel like the 2000 is kind of the perfect size for me, which is good.
Are there other questions that?
Hello, my name is Turner. I'm from Tampa, Florida, so a bit of a flight. I actually had a question for you, if that's okay. Ideally, I would also like to be a government and legal studies and history a double major, which you mentioned that's what you are, right? Okay, just want to make sure. And I apologize for this question because I'm assuming that you're getting it a lot as you are soon going to be graduating, but what are the opportunities after you leave Bowdoin for a government legal studies history double major? As for better or for worse, I've always heard from my parents that history is an unemployable major, and I just want to know, is there going to be anything that I can do with it, or am I going to be living on the streets?
Let me just say, I'm a historian.
I was a history
And
major too.
employed.
I was going to say, Dean Scanlon, I'm going to ask you to respond as well. But Janet, if you want to talk a little bit first, you're welcome to.
I totally can. I feel like one of the big benefits of Bowdoin is obviously it's a liberal arts education. It's not like every single person who's a history major is going to be a historian.
Though you could be.
They could be. They totally could be. And there's a lot of people I know who are going into academia, but I think, we have the benefit of not necessarily having extremely pre-professional majors. And so with the CXD, which is our Career Exploration and Development Office, they do a great job of working with us to be able to market kind of our liberal arts degrees a little bit. And so I've honestly found a lot of applicability for my history major and my government major when I'm talking about jobs and talking about my future, just because I can write, I know how to research, I know how to find sources and that kind of stuff, and that's really, really advantageous when you're looking beyond college. And if the CXD works really well with you to be able to take those skills and use them to be able to find your next step. So.
I see there's a hand back here, and then we'll come right up here.
Hi, good morning. I just have a question about the difference in population amongst the student body. I understand there's a large percentage of athletes that come in, and I'm just kind of wondering what kind of integration happens between the athletics people and the non-athletics people, and how, if there's, what kind of work is done to make sure they're all integrated and blended, as opposed to it just being all the athletes hanging out and all the non-athletes hanging out.
Dean Hoppy, do you want to start, and then we can expand as well?
Sure, I'll start with that, but I'm curious what y'all would say as well. I think there's some natural tendencies when you're in season to be around the people who have the same schedule. And so that's what I see influencing things the most. And students at Bowdoin do a lot, right? And so they try to maximize time. And so I tend to see people staying within their teams the most when they're in season. But I also see many examples of where folks over time, just because of their varied interests, really do blend and merge their communities, right? So athletes will stand out, especially in season, because they're usually in some kind of branded gear. So I think that gives some kind of impressions. But as you've heard these folks talk about, and as you start to meet other people, you'll see that folks are double majoring, they're maybe on a sport, they're very invested in an a cappella group, they're writing for the paper. So their interests are pretty expansive, and that tends to kind of expand and merge the communities as well. So curious what you guys think.
I can talk about it too. I think the one thing that I always point out is that there's no like athlete-only housing or like athlete-only, dining or anything like that. We all work out in the same gym even, which, but I think that you're seeing athletes all the time in classes, and they're very approachable and very kind. Like, they chose to come to a school, like they chose to come to Bowdoin too, and so they very often are engaging entirely in the community as well. And so I think there's definitely, times where it feels a little bit separate, but I think both the non-athlete community and the athlete community do a good job of trying to engage.
Yeah, I would say the same thing as Dean Hoppy said. You are with people that share your same schedule. You have practice for like 3 hours a day. You are going to spend time with those people. So I think a bit of that divide is just natural, and I don't know if it's ever going to be solved. But aside from that, you do have athletes in your classes and clubs that you do, and a lot of people are involved in clubs. And everyone goes to classes. I have a lot of good athlete friends. I met a lot of them abroad when I went abroad. There's college houses. You form a really close bond with people that way. And yeah, I don't feel like there's a strict athlete, non-athlete divide aside from just naturally spending time with people you hang out with and maybe a few mixers here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say like the integration happens from the very first day when we spent one night in our dorms and then went on Prio trips. And from there, the groups are mixed with athletes, non-athletes. Your interests and activities are all mixing. Your classes are all mixing. Obviously we've all talked about how in season it's a little bit more difficult to spend time with other people apart from your team when you're traveling and such. But at the same time, a lot of my close friends are people that are on various varsity athletic teams, and I absolutely love to spend time with them. At the same time, I'm conscious of when they're in season, they're building those relationships with their teammates to be successful in that sense. And then when we're out of season, we're usually seeing each other every single day, and so integrating with each other, and they all have various interests themselves beyond just their team and their athletics, and so they'll be participating in a cappella with me or in the arts in other ways, or just various interests in clubs across campus. And so I would say it's definitely something to pay attention to or to be aware of, but at the same time I've never felt like a real divide between students on campus.
Just a quick plug as we head to our next question. There is a student group showcase this afternoon that you'll definitely want to check out to see the breadth of activities happening on campus. All right, sorry, I think there was a question here. We'll do here and then we'll come to the balcony.
Hi, we are from Seattle, and I was wondering, with each incoming class that you have, they all come to you in August, end of August, what is the biggest change, or maybe is there a main theme that you notice with each incoming class? How do they grow, and is there anything unique to Bowdoin specifically, in the Bowdoin kids, the Bowdoin class that comes in that happens, and is it 3 months in, 6 months in, where do you see this biggest change, and what is it?
So what a great question. What changes happen in our students as they are at Bowdoin? Dean Scanlon, I'm wondering if you want to start, and then others can chime in as well, just from your lens as a faculty member or from your role at the college.
Sure. From my lens, so much takes place in the classroom. So students are engaged right away in their classes. I remember talking with people about the first day of class and how seriously our faculty take that, right? What is it? We want to get students engaged immediately in what we're doing. Faculty are very passionate about what they study and what they teach. And so I think classroom engagement is a very important part of that first semester here. And also just for students learning the array of courses and the array of ways of thinking about the world and the world's questions. So the classroom is a very important part of initial student engagement. And I would say it doesn't take very long. It really doesn't take long to dive deep into a class.
Dean Hoppy, anything you would add from your lens thinking about college students in Bowdoin?
I think in general, it's just natural that a student is going to change as they go through college. If not, you probably want to ask for your money back at commencement. But one of the things I've observed here is how quickly folks tend to adapt into their different identities on campus. Whether that be as an athlete or as a math major or as a member of an a cappella group, or but they tend to flow in and out of those different cohorts so very seamlessly and very quickly. And then the other thing, it's like once you get here, everybody has this like LL Bean main chic. So.
Any of our students, ways you've changed or you see your peers changing? Anything you want to add to those comments?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of independence being in college, and so you learn a lot about yourself through successes and failures, and mostly through failures. And like honestly, I've loved every bit of it. Like first year, I feel like we all got pretty comfortable, even through COVID. Like got pretty comfortable on campus pretty quickly, and I've seen first years now getting more comfortable even faster, and then getting themselves integrated in clubs, becoming honestly like leaders in their clubs and advocating for what they think a club's direction should be, or actually taking up leadership positions within the clubs in their first year. And so I would say people change like all throughout their 4 years, and obviously beyond that, but I would say there's a lot of like leadership opportunities here, and that's primarily how people develop. There's a lot of like exposure and independence and trust that's given to us to make the right decisions and to, explore like who we are. And there's a lot of freedom in that. And so, I feel like we get a lot of exposure, especially in our first year. I had a lot of growth in my first year, but have definitely had some in my last 3 years too.
Yeah, I would echo what you just said. There are a lot of opportunities to just get involved, and I think students take more and more of that as they go throughout the years. You can lead a spring break trip, you can do independent studies, you can do all sorts of things. Aside from that, I want to highlight Bowdoin's meal culture. I've been thinking about this with some friends, but I think Bowdoin students are particularly good at talking to people, and I think it's because of the meal culture. So if you see someone that you just want to talk to, you don't know them, they're in your class or they're not, you just go and say, hey, you want to grab a meal later? And you go in the dining hall and everyone else is having a meal with someone. So I think by virtue of doing that for 4 years, you get really good at talking to people and holding conversations for an hour. So I'd like to think that I've grown in my social skills just by being in the culture of Bowdoin too.
Yeah, I would echo both of those. But I think the other thing that kind of hit me, and I've seen it hit a lot of people, is definitely the academic load and getting up to speed on how you balance all the things, because it's so exciting. There's so many clubs. There's so much, there's so many different things to be balancing during college than in high school. And so I think that first semester, figuring out how to balance, the Bowdoin course load can definitely be tough, but I also I think it's very doable. Obviously, we've done it, but everyone does it. But there's also a lot of support for that as well. And so I think that definitely was my biggest growth point that first year, was figuring out exactly how to make sure everything gets done. But yeah, there's a lot of support for that, whether with BCLT and advisors and other peers and all that kind of stuff. So
I'd also add, just by saying that abroad was a big opportunity for growth. I know I went abroad in my junior fall, and like I loved every set. It was so cool, but it was a big opportunity for growth and development. You see a lot of people going out and that have either never traveled on their own or just never been on their own for that long, and you come back like not necessarily a different person, but you come back definitely with a lot of experiences that you've never had before and a lot of confidence in yourself to go through new situations and be able to navigate that and come back and be able to share that with your friends. And I feel like it also gives you a lot of confidence that the relationships that you've made on campus are things that are going to last, because these are people that you're not going to see for like 6 months or a year. If your friends go abroad in the opposite semester, and then you come back and your relationships are just as strong or stronger than they were when you left. And so it gives you a lot of faith of how the Bowdoin community is going to continue like post-grad, because there's only 1 year left generally after you come back from that. And yeah, that was a big opportunity for growth for sure.
Something I'll just mention, and a value I think that is a big part of Bowdoin culture is humility. So it's funny to not be humble for a moment about our students. I'm not suggesting the admissions office is responsible for these traits at all. But I do think there's something I really appreciate about Bowdoin students, in that they're willing to try new things. There's an open-mindedness, a curiosity. Last week, I was meeting with some students to talk about something, and one of them mentioned to the other, I joined the chamber choir this year. It's a senior I was speaking with. And another person said, I didn't know you joined the chamber choir. Tell me about that. And it was an example, I think, a small, just everyday anecdote of, even as fourth-year students, our students are still trying new things, and there's a welcome embrace of the community to try new things, to be successful, to maybe have some bobbles, fail, I don't know, but that is part of life and also part of the warmth of our community. There are going to be people there who support you in those new adventures and ideas as well, and that's in the classroom and outside of it also. All right, I think there was a question in the balcony.
Thank you. I think that there's always some sort of pressure in a new environment, whether it's pressure created by the environment or pressure we create for ourselves. I'd like to ask what the pressure here at Bowdoin feels like, specifically academic and I guess pre-professional pressure. Thank you.
Yeah. Sure. Janet, go ahead.
No, totally. I think that, and Dean Hoppy kind of mentioned this when he was talking initially, I think that the pressure here is very much coming like internally and not externally. I feel like this is not a very, at least from my view, not an extremely competitive environment between peers. Like I don't ever feel like I'm competing for a grade or competing for a position or anything like that on campus. But I think with that, the pressure that is coming is among everybody and among yourselves of having really high expectations of how you want to perform, which I really appreciate. I think that people are very serious about what they do, are very dedicated to learning and learning for learning's sake rather than just learning to get to the next benchmark, which is definitely what I wanted from college, and I've been happily satisfied with that. But yeah, I think a lot of the pressure is not necessarily coming from your peers or like coming from any sort of competition. It's definitely more of just wanting to push yourself to the highest potential that you have.
I would add to that I think our students are highly accomplished. They've been highly accomplished in many ways before they come to Bowdoin, and they intend to be highly accomplished while they're here. We certainly have high expectations in our academic program, but we have expectations that we feel all of our students can meet with support, and we have lots of support, as you've heard. One thing a student said to me I found really compelling. She said, when I was in high school, there was kind of one way to be smart. And then I came to Bowdoin, and there's so many ways to be smart here. And I like that because it sort of acknowledged that there isn't one pathway to being successful or to being able to feel good about yourself and your accomplishments. We all want to be smart. We all want to make good decisions and contribute, but there are so many ways to do it. And I think one of our tasks as an institution is to provide that kind of freeing up for students, that there are all kinds of ways to exercise intelligence in the world.
That was great. I don't know how to follow that up. One thing I will say, though, you touched on this, and then you also touched on this. You are all very highly accomplished. That's why you're here. You, I'm assuming, got very, very good grades when you were in high school to be able to get here. And you're surrounded by people who are also the same. There's going to be a level of stress that you all just create for yourselves that doesn't need to be there as a result. So I do agree that there is a level of academic pressure, but a lot of it is just because you're just so highly accomplished and you all want to achieve so highly. And I think throughout your college career, you kind of get it. You learn from your failures and realize that, again, there are different types of intelligences, or that the grades are not what matters, but actually what you learn. So yeah, there definitely is that pressure, but I think it eases as you just kind of don't be too stressed out. It's gonna be okay. You've had to be stressed out to get this far, so you can kind of pull back the reins a little bit, while also still doing all the great work that you obviously do.
Dean Hoppy, just for a quick second before we get to our next question, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the resources on campus that we have to support students in navigating this balance and wellness.
Sure. So we have an integrated approach to our counseling, health, and wellness operations. And so we have a counseling center on campus that can pretty much always get somebody in within 24 hours of requesting an appointment. We have a health center on campus. We have a slate of different wellness programs, peer health education, a lot of emphasis on gender violence prevention. Then in that next round, we have a class dean model here, where as you come in as a first-year student, you'll have a first-year dean that'll help advise you in addition to the support you're getting from your academic advisor. And then you'll be assigned to a dean who will be with you for the remainder of your time at Bowdoin. So it's a chance to build that relationship and to have multiple places you can go for support, advice, guidance. And then as you continue, you're going to make relationships with different faculty members as you get to connect with members of the CXD that you've heard referenced. We have a sophomore boot camp that every returning second-year student participates in January, where it's this emphasis on how do you start making sense about getting ready for what happens after Bowdoin now, while you still have time to influence it. We have advisors that work in the CLT. We have advisors and staff that work in the McKean Center and the Outing Club. You're going to find folks kind of in every aspect of your life that are there to help you do a specific thing, but then also give you connection and advice for the broader range of what it means to be at Bowdoin and then what it means to be a human in the world today.
Thank you. And I'll just also put in a plug. There are a number of events today that will be opportunities to learn more, but there is a panel at 1 p.m. on the first-year academic experience, and I'm sure advising and the wonderful role of our faculty advisors will be discussed in that space. There's also a panel called Senior to Senior, and parents and family members. This is just for students, but if you want to talk more about Bowdoin campus culture and hear from additional students, at 2 p.m., students can check that out as well. So there were more hands, and I think there was one in this direction.
I wanted to expand on a question that someone had asked about not so much athlete, non-athlete divide, but the social scene in general. What do you guys do on weekends? And I've read a little bit about the campus houses, I think, and I'm curious how that kind of comes into play as people sort of make their way, find their social groups beyond just clubs and activities.
Sammy, do you want to start? I know you've been involved in a campus house as well. Several of our students have here. But how do you spend your time on a weekend? And do you want to talk a little bit more about campus houses as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
Social houses.
It really varies on the weekend what I do. It could be, one night of going out or another night of just watching a movie. I've had a weekend where I just watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy with my roommates. That was great. And like ordered Domino's, and that was so much fun. But also, I have like a lot of weekends where there are a lot of like performances to do or to go watch, or talks to go watch, or things happening in the Smith Union Center, or clubs putting on events. So there's like honestly an endless supply of things to do on weekends. There's a lot of different varieties at the same time. It really depends on what you want to do and what you want your weekend to look like. And honestly, for me, it's really what the people around me are doing too, because I just really like to spend time with my friends. So as long as we're doing that, I don't really care what we're doing. The college houses, that was like the best time of my life. That was so much fun. So for anybody that doesn't know, the college houses are sophomore housing, and it's opportunity for sophomores to really have leadership space on campus and dictate like the social life of campus. So it's meant to be like the living rooms of campus. And so the college houses have about 20-something sophomores that live in them. There's 8 of them, and they're spaced out mostly on one street, but at some parts on campus. And they each have committees. They each have, if I'm remembering correctly, and they haven't changed the structure, they have 5 committees that are supposed to be either for integrating with the community beyond Bowdoin and general Brunswick, or integrating with clubs on campus, or just the first year experience. And so the college houses will put on a bunch of events throughout weekends. We'll either host bands to come and perform at them or put on their own events. And that's a really popular way for first years and sophomores and some upperclassmen as well to come and hang out on weekends and spend time together. It really depends on what events they're doing, but that's like a great opportunity. I made some of my closest friends living in the college houses, and it was possibly the greatest year of my time at Bowdoin. It was definitely the greatest year.
Yeah. As a first year, you are going to get close to your roommates, hopefully, and also your floor. So my first year, I spent a lot of time the weekends going out with my floor, watching movies with my floor, and that's also been a trend throughout the years where I just hang out with the people that I room with. I love dancing. Like it's my favorite thing to do, so I dance a lot on the weekends. And yeah, as you pretty much covered it, there's a lot of events. College House do various events. Student Activities throws various events. There was a concert that happened, I think, last week, where we brought in an artist. That happens a few times. Yeah, so there's a lot of things to do.
Yeah, I think my biggest part, my weekends are always full. There's always some sort of a club event happening like during the day on the weekends. Right now I'm in a class where I have to play a board game once every weekend with people from my class. So honestly, I find like there's a big brunch culture here. Everyone gets up, they go to brunch together. I usually go with my friends. And then after that, I've got some sort of club event, whether that's a water polo scrimmage or, a performance. I've got a couple friends who are in improv troops and a cappella groups, and there's usually something. Or then there's also a bunch of athletic events and those kind of things. I feel like there's just so many ways to support your friends and that kind of stuff. So my weekends end up full with however I want to spend them. And of course I do some work on the side as well sometimes. You got to get that in there too. But
Oh, there's another question up here.
Thank you for your time this morning. My question is about caring and mentoring, and I'm interested in specific examples of either how a faculty member has showed you how they care about you as a person, or an example about faculty or staff who has helped you specifically in supporting your goals and dreams.
I can take that one. So currently I'm doing an honors project about Irish history, which our history department is awesome. I have loved everything I've taken. I decided to do this honors project because I went abroad to Ireland and came back. There's not really anybody who's a huge Irish history person in our department. And so I connected with some people from our department, but I have this professor in the Gov department. Shout out Professor Lawrence, he's awesome. I have this professor in the Gov department who is a British politics historian and also like political science expert. And so I had a couple classes with him. We often get lunch together, and I talked to him halfway through, or when I was trying to figure out who was going to be on my advising for my history honors. And he was like, "Oh, I could help you with that. Like, I know enough about Irish history. I could be a good resource for you." And so he's gone out of his way to add another honors project to his plate, which takes a good bit of time. I have to meet with them once a month. And he did that just because he was like, "Oh, absolutely, that sounds super interesting, and I would love to help you." And so I think it's just completely indicative of how close those relationships are, especially as you become an upperclassman. I get meals with professors, at least once or twice a semester, which is really fun. I'm actually supposed to go porcupine watching with Professor Lawrence in like a couple days. I need to get that together. But I think that that was a very indicative moment to me. I was like, these faculty members, want to support student research, and they want to support whatever academic interest you might have, even if that's maybe outside of their purview or maybe a little bit of extra work for them. I think that was a really great experience for me. So
I would echo what you just said about our amazing faculty. I have had a lot of experiences that have made me realize just how open they are to meeting students. So we have office hours. You can choose to go, and you can also choose to talk about whatever you want, even if it's not about the homework. There was this one particular teacher for one of my classes, and it was a great class. It was called Esoteric Arts of Africa, Black Magic. And I think that class changed a lot of my views on just life. And post-class, I would talk to the professor for 30 minutes to an hour sometimes, just asking him questions, trying to grill him, trying to change his mind. He's trying to maybe change mine. And that was just amazing. And a lot of things like that happen, I feel, where there's just that connection with the faculty member, and you feel like they care for you because they're taking that extra time outside of teaching to talk to you. I've heard a lot of stories of students, not porcupine watching, but going to a farm on a professor's farm, babysitting, a lot of different things. And then also there are a lot of research positions that professors just give to students, even if you don't have experience. The math thing that I did not have any differential equations experience, but my professor / my advisor just wanted me to succeed, and he took the time to teach me and show me the ropes. So faculty really cares about you here, and yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, I would say most of the relationships develop organically from my experience, at least. With my professors, I haven't done research on campus, but I've developed relationships with them where I can pop over on office hours, even if it's not for my class, and just have a conversation on a topic that either I'm interested in, they're interested in, or neither of us are interested in, and we both need to talk about. And it's really helpful to just be able to brainstorm like that, but also to just have casual conversations with your professors and be able to see them in a personal light. So I know in introductions at the beginning of the semester, a lot of professors will tell you about a little bit about themselves and their lives and their families to get that a little bit of a personal factor. And then with professors that have been interested in, professors that have families around, they've asked me when I'm having performances with groups that I'm involved in on campus or around campus in the local community, and they've come out with their families and come to support and love to go to that or go to games. You always see them there. And also just the fun little trips that you plan with your professors. There's a history museum in Bath, I forget what about, but I was doing a presentation with my professor of the history of Bowdoin economics. That was a class, and we were just discussing what our specific presentation was going to be about, and the topic of Bath came up, and he just mentioned the fact that he used to live there and was like, I want to take you to a history museum and a couple of your classmates. And so that's been in the works for a while. There's a little bit of a habit of making plans that get delayed time and time again on campus, especially with meals, but they usually happen at some point, and so our time is finite, so it will happen soon. But yeah, it's a lot of organic relationships, and it's because the professors really care about what they're doing on campus, but as more than that, just care about us as people, and they want to see us succeed, obviously academically, but as people beyond the classroom, and they're willing and able to spend the time to do that.
Thank you all for that. I want to add something. One of the elements of my job is to oversee sort of promotion and tenure processes for faculty. And yesterday I had the good fortune to call 5 members of our faculty to tell them that they've been promoted to full professor at Bowdoin. One of the elements of that months and months long process of evaluation is that we read all of their student course evaluations from the end of the semester, but also these things we call our retrospective letters. So it's a random sampling of students who have been in people's classes, and we send out invitations and we ask them to write letters about their experiences with faculty members. And I always have to tell the people when I call them, I wish you could see those letters, but they can't actually see them. But we quote from them in our letters. But I want to say 2 things about those letters, or maybe 3. The first one is about the students and the ways that they craft these letters. They take this assignment so seriously to provide evaluative information about their faculty. And the second thing is that the students are, some of them have been out of the classroom for several years. They've either not taken more classes or they've graduated and are now out in professional life. And they also take the time, even the students who aren't here. But the third thing is really about the content of those. And they talk about the impact of the faculty while they were in classes. But for those who have graduated, they talk about the continuing impact of the faculty as they're entering and into professional life. Whether the course they took with that person was, pertinent to what they're actually doing now, and sometimes it is, and many times it isn't. But there are things that they've taken from the experience of either the kind of learning that they engaged with, or just the experience of learning that they carry forward with them into their professional lives. So what I would say is that the impact of faculty is long-lasting.
I see there's a question in the back there. And then Evan, will go to you next.
Good morning. One of the trickiest things to figure out about in a place that you don't know is its ethos, that thing in the air that everybody knows, but it's hard to put into words. But a few words that it seems like are promoted a lot, at least at Bowdoin, is the idea of promoting the common good. And I'm just wondering, for students, what do those words mean to you? Have their meaning changed over the time that you're here and as you're anticipating leaving Bowdoin? Have you been thinking about that?
Yeah, I think the common good is one of those things that sounds like a marketing thing. And I think when I was first entering Bowdoin, my understanding of like the common good and why we do things was like just service and, just going out of your way to do volunteer work and that kind of stuff. But I feel like that's not at all how I think about it now. I think, obviously that is a big part. We've got the McKean Center. There's, a lot of opportunities for that. But I think the idea of the common good and keeping this this mentality of wanting to make the world better and make the communities around you better, and to continue to show up in your life for that purpose is something that has been pervasive throughout my entire time at Bowdoin and in every aspect of what I do, whether that's in the classroom. I think that that's a huge focus academically of how professors talk and how, students engage with, especially in government and especially in history, but even computer science. I think there's a lot of conversation about how does this actually impact the wider world? How does this impact communities? And then in my activities that I do, especially with the Orient and the newspaper, thinking about how are we impacting the communities that we are having, and being able to have those conversations of where do we go from here? I think that that's something, especially in the last 4 years, coming out of COVID and having to think about community a lot more and thinking about our place in it. It is a conversation that I've had time and time again with all levels of this place, whether that's administration or other students or faculty. I think it's just something that's always kind of on my mind. And I really appreciate it. I really, that is definitely what I wanted from my college experience, was to have a place that is constantly pushing you to think about your place in the world and think about your place in a community and think about how you can do that better, and not, a very moral place. I really, really appreciated it, so.
I fully agree with that. I also think coming to college, I thought it was going to be a lot of volunteering, but it is if you are very involved in Joseph McKean Center. But as you said, there are a lot of classes, talks, conversations, dialogues that are held by the school that ask you to think about your place in the world and what your impact is. At least for CS, there is a computer science class that's basically talking about the social implications of the internet, technology that we use. Digital computational studies, which is really on the up and coming, is fully concerned about the ethics of AI, digital technologies. So I think you really get that. And also, I think admissions does a great job of selecting students. I am constantly inspired by my peers and just the questions that they ask, the things that they want to do post-grad, and also my professors. Everyone cares about the world and, how we can leave it better off. So I've been thinking a lot about that too, about what I'll do as a computer scientist to make the world better. I'm not sure, but I think it matters that I'm being asked to asked to think about those questions.
Yeah, and just to expand on that just a little bit, I would completely agree. It is, essentially just it's grown to be, to me at least, an awareness of how you occupy the spaces that you occupy. And so, just being aware is, I believe, like the hardest step. And, once you're aware, you can make actions towards what you want your space to be like. But at the same time, the common good has become like something that you manifest in your everyday life. Like it could be holding the door for the person behind you. It could be just, smiling at a person walking down towards class. It could be going and volunteering and, doing things more in that sense. But it really does take effect in various forms on campus. Some people will do nothing with the McKean Center across their 4 years, and that's totally fine. But some people will do, 2 clubs with the McKean Center and various volunteering opportunities every week. And so, would I say that one is doing the common good more than the other? I honestly, when I first came here, I'd probably say yes, but now I don't think so, because they're all contributing to campus and what Bowdoin is in their own unique ways, and we honestly need all of them. And so that variety is what we take pride in, and the fact that people can make that choice and determine what they want to look like. Also, in classes, there are a lot of conversations, a lot of discussion-based conversations where it's an open conversation. Our professors really emphasize the fact that they want us to say our opinions freely, and obviously being considerate, but in a free manner. And so that allows us to just really explore the full extent of, with a bunch of other smart people, what views on various topics could be, and it could be contentious topics, it could be not contentious topics, but you just get the opportunity to have those discussions in a place and with people that you trust. And so I feel like it's important to have that basis, and then be able to expand that to the real world and have those conversations with people you might not know at all.
Well, I know we had a question in the balcony, but I do want to be mindful of the time, and I think we're coming up on the half hour here. So to that person, I will catch you afterwards and see if I can get you some answers. But I do just want to thank you for coming, and more importantly, I want to thank our panelists for joining us this morning. There's a variety of additional wonderful opportunities. For example, our academic fair, in which you can learn more about all the wonderful different departments at the college and meet additional faculty, not to mention the student group showcase, panels on life after Bowdoin, the academic experience as a first year, and so on. But thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for your thoughtful questions. I now need to go discover what porcupine discovery is or something, but hopefully you learned something new and also had an opportunity to get a feel for what makes this place so special. So thank you.